following program was pre-recorded and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station or its management.
The views expressed on this program are meant for discussion purposes only. No statements are intended to make or claim that any product mentioned or discussed, including but not limited to Young Living's products, are intended for use in the diagnosis, cure, mitigation, treatment, or prevention of disease.
They've helped thousands find the home of their dreams. They connected you with flooring, painting, and carpentry experts to spruce up your current residence. Now it's time for a different kind of home improvement. This is Our Healthy Homes, bringing comfort and wellness into your household.
There is no place like home.
Here are your hosts, Keith and Sheila Hittner.
Hey, welcome to the program. This is Our Healthy Homes, ourhealthyhomes.com. That's the big website that you want to go to. You know something, we've been in business for a long time, and we have the question all the time, what do you do? You ever get that question? What do you do for a living? We have a hard time answering that question. We own businesses that support families as they move through various lifestyles and changes over time. We help them buy and sell real estate and inform them about real estate through 2 unique radio programs. What we've started to do within the last couple of years is become very interested in living in their homes in a healthy lifestyle. So we've created this program to help facilitate that. I'm excited today because we have Carolyn Blazovsky on the radio program. And Carolyn is a national healthy home expert with over 17 years of experience working with the public and physicians to create healthy living spaces and improve wellness. Her certifications and education include knowledge of mold, indoor air quality, chemicals in the home, green building, healthy homes, and allergies. Carolyn was featured in the AARP 2016 as a leading health and safety expert and is a regular guest on Sirius XM Radio and works with leading physicians all over the country. She's a public educator in the media, radio, television, and print, and she's also president of My Healthy Homes. Did you steal that name from us, or did you think of that all by yourself, Carolyn?
I think it was a long time ago.
Okay, so probably before we got it. So I probably stole it from you then.
Probably.
All right. So here's the deal. Give us, we hear your background. Certainly you're well versed in the area. I'm excited to talk to you because you have more of a national perspective, obviously, that we do here in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, Minnesota. What are the trends that you see as you go across the country and speak about people's concerns and interest in living healthy lifestyles?
Well, I think what's interesting, and you guys deal a lot in real estate, which is important. I think, one, consumers are looking to pay more to live in a healthier environment, which is important. So yes, the economic piece was always a concern, but now people realize that they're going to be getting potentially a healthier product and a safer product if they pay more. And sometimes that's the case and sometimes it's not, right? So sometimes it's about education and knowing what's in your products and teaching consumers to read labels and understand what they're getting, because not all products are the same. So for example, if you're buying paint, a low VOC paint may be different than a high VOC paint or a no VOC paint. And then you have flooring where you have engineered or manufactured flooring, which is different than if you use real tongue and groove, or if you put in, less manufactured or real flooring. So real wood flooring. So, there's a lot of differences, and I think it's about educating people. And that's the trends we see are people are willing to pay more to have a healthier and safer product.
And it's a pay me now or pay me later scenario too. I mean, you can pay now for a healthier home, or you can pay the hospital later.
I think more and more people are realizing that too. Where I don't think that people even gave that a thought years ago. And I always teach in my classes that, this younger generation is and has seen their parents go through a lot of issues with the medications and so forth. So I think that's helping that younger generation to pay attention to this type of thing.
Tell us a little bit about your work and where are your focuses that you're paying attention to right now. We spoke just earlier before we came on the air, and you said you were launching a new product line. Why don't we just start there?
Well, the product that we're launching is a mold and allergen test kit that would be, and has been available to the public. We're just revamping it, if you will, and modernizing it. So the issues are, how can homeowners figure out if their homes are unhealthy, right? So the question becomes, well, is my home healthy? Is it not? And there's a lot of things in homes that make a home healthy or not. And the question is, how can we provide that to people? So, for example, in real estate, one of my biggest concerns, and this is where I think what you're doing is absolutely fantastic, is when someone's purchasing a home, I feel like the whole process on how someone uses an inspector and what they're looking for is really mismatched with having a healthy home. And you could probably agree with me. The things that we're worrying about aren't necessarily the things that we should be. No homeowner, in my opinion, should be buying a home without testing mold, is the first thing, and water. Those are the first two things.
Oh,
because
yes.
if you're going to purchase a home and make what exactly, right? If you make a big investment, these are things that are going to cost you a significant amount once you get into the transaction, and you may not be able to change. So you really need to do these tests first, in my opinion, and you can kind of elaborate on what you think about that.
I think that, in fact, I just got a notice this morning. We sold a house last night, and so the notice came through this morning. They've scheduled their inspection, and they're having a radon test, of course, to test for radon gas, and they're having their normal inspection, and then they're also doing a sewer scope to make sure that the sewer lines, but all of the inspection items that people seem to focus on are always on structural components and major systems in the house, and very little is done in terms of, I don't know that I've ever had, we've sold probably 5,000 houses. I don't know that I've ever had anyone do a mold test.
No.
Prior to purchasing.
No, I mean,
interesting. In New Jersey, that's become, I'm just using New Jersey as an example because that's where my business is located, but that's become a pretty standard thing now. So most people, I'd say, well, let's say 50% at least, are always doing a mold air sample.
Really?
Okay, so how long do you think that it'll be before that's just a common thing, just like, radon now is, do you have any idea on that?
It surprises me. I mean, I'm actually surprised that it isn't where you are. That's kind of shocking to me, and sort of it's actually it's not a good thing, because there shouldn't be that much discrepancy, right? I mean, you live in a big city, metropolitan area. This should be a standard. I mean, water testing and mold testing should be standard across the board if you're purchasing a house.
And what kind of water testing are you talking about?
VOC testing, pesticide testing in the water.
Okay.
Obviously, you need to do a lead test. Everything that happened with Flint, Michigan is just an example.
Right.
What leaves the plant is not necessarily what you're getting at your tap. And unfortunately, when you're treating for, not everybody, some people have wells, some people have chlorination. When you're transmitting water to a location, it's got to pass within all kinds of piping and plumbing, and those things can be corroding, as we saw in Flint. People can end up with contaminated water. Also, the amount of chlorination and the chlorination byproducts that you receive in your water are also of concern. There was a report in 2009 that went to the President of the United States, and basically what they did was they put the best physicians on the issue of cancer and said, look, what do we think are the major culprits in this disease? And of course, chlorination byproduct was one of the issues that came up. And what that means for people is when your chlorine breaks down, comes in contact with other substances along the way, it forms different types of haloacidic acids and different byproducts that are carcinogenic. So when that happens, people are exposed to, potential cancer risks. So that's why it's important to test your water, know what's in it, know if you need filtration, know if you need osmosis, reverse osmosis, whatever it might be.
So how much is your mold test, and how does it work?
The mold tests, we do lots of different testing at the company. I mean, we test for all types of things, from volatile organics to formaldehydes to molds to mycotoxins, whatever. But a standard mold and allergen test runs about $400. The consumer orders a test. They do 3 to 4 samples in their home. That comes back to our laboratory, and then within 2 days you have the results, and that will tell you about your molds, your allergen levels, your dust mite levels, a lot of basic things. So that's our examinaire. It's called EXAMINAIR. To me, that's a really good fundamental test to start with. If you're someone who's not really sure what's going on, but you're kind of worried about your home environment, that's a good place to start. It's your baseline.
So then how does the test work? Like, you get those samples.
So we send you a pump, and there's also cassettes, what we call our allergen codes. They're basically cassettes that come with it. You connect them for air sampling, and it's traditional air sampling that any indoor air quality professional does. We've just made it into a kit so homeowners can use it. And then basically you take a couple air samples with a pump. It goes onto a cassette, and then that goes to the lab and we read it.
Okay, Carolyn, we have to go out to break and hang with us, and we'll just come back after these
Sure.
messages. All right. So he's resetting, and then we'll start right away.
I can't believe you guys aren't testing for mold out there. That's crazy to me.
Because of our
You have a whole
environment.
other. Yeah, I mean, everybody should be. It doesn't matter where you live. That blows my mind. I mean, because it's become pretty standard in the Northeast that
We're a little behind the times here.
all over the.
Yeah, this is the Midwest
Yeah,
after
I mean,
all.
it's really important.
All right, ready?
Stand by one
I'm gonna
sec.
explain. Yeah.
Hey, welcome back to the program. This is Our Healthy Homes, ourhealthyhomes.com, and we're speaking with Carolyn Blazovsky, and she is an interesting gal. She's been doing what we're doing here for a long time, educating people about living a healthy lifestyle, living in your home in a healthy manner, and helping people to actually test and monitor and choose good construction techniques and whatnot. When we went out to break, we were talking about mold and mold testing, and off air, Carolyn was surprised that we don't do mold testing here, and kind of was describing the process of doing that mold testing. What is it about your kit now that's different from the way it was before? You said you were updating the kit, and tell us about that, revamping it. What's that mean?
Well, I kind of want to explain too, to the audience, what molds do and why it's important to test for them. So, if you don't mind,
I do. I love it.
Go ahead. Understand this. So why molds are so bad, and people say often, well, we've had molds for thousands of years. Why is it a concern now? So molds do three things. They're the fuzzy thing you see growing on a piece of fruit, or in your shower, and that's a spore. That spore has a beta glucan in it, which is very similar to a sugar. These items that molds contain cause inflammation in the body. So not only one, do they sort of act like an allergen, right, in a certain percentage of the population just because of their makeup. Two, molds also do another thing. They are similar. They smoke cigarettes, I call it. So when they breathe in and out, they put off a gas, which is called an M, like Mary, VOC. So very similar. People know the term VOC to paint, correct? But this is an MVOC. So molds also produce a chemical. Thirdly, if you get toxic mold or certain species of mold, they have the ability to produce a mycotoxin. And what is this? It's sort of like if you and I were both molds and you are attacking my food source, I'm going to throw a mycotoxin at you. It's a poison.
Okay.
So when you get molds doing three things, producing a poison, smoking cigarettes, and producing something that causes inflammation, this is what makes it so bad in your home.
I think what we hear a lot from people when the issue, we go down in the basement, it's an old dark damp basement, you got black mold growing up the walls, and then the question is, well, first of all, how do you get rid of it? Number one. Number two, where did it come from? And number three, why is it there, and will it come back?
Correct. So the reason molds form is moisture.
Okay.
And humidity. And you don't have to have a leak. People often think, oh, well, I've never had a leak in my home. Why is my home filled with mold? You just have to have high relative humidity and an increase in moisture. And what does that mean for your area of the country or my area of the country? It means whenever you have cold concrete or cold basement floor, and then you get an influx of a really nice, beautiful, warm day, and those two temperatures meet, you're going to condensate, form water.
Right.
And when you do, guess what? Molds form, and they love it.
So once the mold has formed, is there an easy way to get rid of it? Or is it, kind of once it glams onto a surface, you're kind of stuck with it?
Well, I mean, normally if you have concrete or you have, wood and things like that, you can wipe down surfaces and clean it away, and you can do mold remediation and get the area, sort of revitalized. But when you have things like drywall and paper products and boxes and things that starts to grow on more porous material, usually that stuff has to be thrown out or disregarded, or there has to be construction done to kind of get to the bare bones. But there's lots of remediation companies that do that. Obviously, I'm a certified mold remediator. I don't do mold remediation, though I am certified in it. Because you need to know it.
If I'm a homeowner living in my home right now, and what are some of the symptoms that I may experience that would lead me to look for mold?
If you can't see it.
If I can't see it or I'm just unaware,
right. And that's one of the reasons you test, right? You always test because, and there's 3 different types of methods for testing. You don't always have to do a spore trap. Is we have different types of tests for mold, but one is the traditional is a spore trap.
Mm-hmm.
Molds you can't see, right? Sometimes it's in the walls, it's behind things under the carpet. So that's why you do a test to find out what kind you have. Do you have toxic mold, mycotoxins? Secondly, if you're getting repeated infections, you notice you get sinus infections, instead of just getting a traditional cold that lasts 4 or 5 days and it's gone, and you start to have these things that linger, pneumonia, your immune system seems sluggish, maybe you're tired, you might be having some neurologic effects. Those are all reasons to test, definitely.
It's interesting you mentioned earlier about the cancer and some of the work that you're doing with people with cancer, and according to the American Cancer Society, only about 5 to 10% of cancers are genetic based. 90 to 95% of them are environment. So we surround ourselves with an environment that causes us to have cancer, and it sounds like mold might be one of those items. And the other thing is the inflammation. I was reading an article earlier in the week talking about inflammation and the link between inflammation and depression. And we hear so much now about depression and the drugs that are being pushed out over depression, and they again are saying the same thing, that depression they're finding is more and more linked to environment. And if we're trapping ourselves northeast, Minnesota, the doors and windows are closed most of the times. We're encased in these cocoons, all sealed up so that they're energy efficient. But now we're rebreathing microtoxins and chemicals and causing inflammation.
Right, and my philosophy has been, doing this almost 20 years now, is that the body is pretty resilient, right? It can take in a lot of insults and keep going, and it's fine. But when you get multiple insults, or what I call a trifecta of different things affecting it, I'll walk into a home and I'll see somebody with autoimmune disease or cancer or illness. So when they have multiple factors of indoor air pollution, and those can be lots of things. It can be high dust mites, it can be high VOCs, it can be pesticide exposure, it could be mold, etc. When you see multiple factors at once, you're going to see somebody in the home that doesn't feel well. And that's, unfortunately, I get called in a lot of the time. And we know that cancer is related to mycotoxin exposure. We know that that's been studied for a while now, and that these mycotoxins that molds produce, it's not necessarily the mold itself, it's the mycotoxin that can be extremely immunosuppressive and, obviously potentially carcinogenic.
So I have a question. Each generation, now is just weaker and weaker, right? Because of all the toxicity levels, right? Mm-hmm. So
you say that like it's a fact. Is that a fact?
It is a fact. I bet you she can.
I think that we have a lot more exposures than we did, right? Mm-hmm. And the amount of them, and then of course the fact that we've tightened the building envelope so significantly, as you've discussed, is a problem. So we've trapped a lot of things in the home. People don't open their windows. They don't go outside. They're exposed to less sunlight. All of these factors, come into producing a lot of inflammation. I believe the body is in the theory of inflammation, meaning that the more inflammation you have, the more disease you're going to have.
You sound like my wife now.
It's not that the body doesn't work. Go ahead.
I say you sound like my wife now. She's harping at me all the time about it, the inflammation.
It's the inflammation. And so to me, it's not that the body really isn't working effectively. It's more that the body gets bogged down. So if I took both of you and I stuck you in a snowstorm and I decide not to give you water and I decide not to give you any food, your body would still work effectively. You just would be going tremendously slower, and you wouldn't be able to just go as quickly. And I think that's how the body sort of takes on all this inflammation. It's not necessarily a structural problem. It's more of a bogging down problem.
So my question,
things start to back up.
So my question to that was, do you think that this is so much of why the younger kids are so sick now? I mean, they're just more sick than we were.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think the chemical exposure is contributing a lot to why. I mean, I believe 85% of what people experience in health-related industry is, environmentally induced. I think we do it to ourselves. I think it's all the air fresheners and byproducts and detergents and all these unnecessary fragrance and all kinds of things that we use that just our body doesn't need, and they all have carcinogenic effects. So yeah, I think it's the amount of toxicity that we're exposed to.
So what made you be so passionate about this?
Back when I was in my 20s, I mean, I didn't have the same issues, but I developed allergies, and I went to a physician and I said, I have allergies, and they said, well, we don't know why you have allergies. You just have them, take a pill. And I'm like, no, this is ridiculous. So I said, I got really passionate about mold back then. And, I've been doing mold and mold testing and stuff for 20 years. So, and then I branched into Vols Organics, and then I branched into all kinds of indoor air quality issues. And, I sit on the Indoor Air Quality Association Public Education Committee nationally. So, I just have a real big passion about creating healthy homes and healthy spaces. And unfortunately, in our country, we don't have a governing body at all that looks over products that go into homes. So basically, a consumer has to understand that anything can be placed in a home, whether it's electrical equipment, plumbing, paint, construction materials, and you have to be your advocate at this juncture in the world. So, until we get some sort of governing agency that sort of polices this, you have to be the one that researches your products and knows what you're getting. Not all products are the same. Not all drywall is the same. Not all paints are the same. So you really have to understand what you're getting, read MSDS sheets, read safety data sheets, know what you're getting, and try to stick to, my opinion, is go less manufactured, go more, purer in your selection process.
Yeah, and that goes true with the products that you put on your face and in your body and the food you eat as well. What is your opinion on...
People forget about the home,
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they'll go to Whole Foods and think they're doing a good job, and then they go home to a toxic environment and eat it. When we come back...
That's the problem, go ahead.
I said, when we come back, I want to talk to you about, I want your opinion on electromagnetic fields. You mentioned electrical equipment, so that kind of opened the door for me on EMFs and EMF testing. And I want to know if that's a hocus pocus scam or if that's the real deal. We got to go out to break. When we come back, we'll pick it up. See you in a couple. Do you know anything about EMF testing?
I do.
Okay. I figured you might.
I have someone I refer out to for EMF, but I mean, I know, quite a bit about it, and that it's, definitely an issue. But again, it comes back to, like we're talking about our bodies, right? So you see a lot of people getting implants now in the body, and they're getting more metal put in and more things that conduct, right? Just teeth. And so then you start to throw in an EMF with a metal implant in your mouth, and what have you got? You know what I mean? So it's like the whole picture. We've just everything is artificial now, and it's just creating issues.
Let's pick up with that when we get back here. 1 sec.
All right.
Stand by.
Welcome back to the program. This is Our Healthy Homes, ourhealthyhomes.com. That's the website you want to go to. See the last shows that we've recorded. We always have them recorded on Facebook. And you can reach out there. There's a form on the right side there if you want to fill that out and have a question. We'd be happy to help with your questions, all course with no cost and absolutely no obligation. Okay, so when we went out to a break, we just teased a little bit on EMF testing and electrical equipment. And tell us a little bit about that whole area of there. You mentioned people are, getting implants and those types of things off air. Give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so the increase with obviously Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and cell towers and all of these issues have, created a whole field of electromagnetic inspectors. I'm not an electromagnetic inspector, but I do have inspectors that I refer out to. I definitely have seen health problems related to EMF. The crossing of frequency, the crossing of wiring in homes creates different types of energy fields, as well as, just excessive exposure to radio frequencies. So all of that stuff, can create health issues. And especially, we see a lot. I had a client who was experiencing really, really profound dizzy spells and just all sorts of strange symptoms. And they had been all over looking for answers. And I literally, in a phone call, I solved the problem. And I said, are you sleeping up against a a paneled system? Are you in a building where you have paneling, where they put multiple boxes?
Right.
A lot of this becomes a problem where you have multiple frequencies and multiple energy sources coming into one area. And sure enough, he was, and he also had an elevator on the other side, and it was creating a field. And all we did was, remove him from that space, and he was perfectly fine. So, yeah, these things definitely cause health issues, especially if you have implants, metal implants in your body. You can, conduct all kinds of frequency as well. I've had clients who have picked up, radio frequency because they have a neck implant. So, yes, it's something to be concerned about. There's more and more of it. And you can get your house examined. There's definitely inspectors who do that for a living.
We actually had our house examined, not our head examined, our house examined.
Now that's next.
And we have these plugins, and he told us about some blanketing and shielding that could be done. Very interesting. And so it gets into this whole realm of frequency that you were speaking of. And of course, our bodies are electrical machines. And we have every organ in our body has its own unique frequency that it operates under. And that's how the brain knows when it's sending the signal to your liver to send it under this frequency. And if the liver is operating correctly, then you're going to be in good shape. But if it isn't, then you need to do something. Something's affecting that liver, and maybe it's a frequency issue. And we're doing some testing right now. What's it called again? I can never remember.
Field controlled therapy. Have you heard of it?
Field control therapy. So field control therapy, of course, deals with frequencies. And part of the therapy, we take these water that carries the frequency that's doing the corrective measure.
Water drops. And
then we, at night, turn off the Wi-Fi, the Bluetooth, shut the phones off. We basically shut the house down. And I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he's doing the same thing with his wife and has for a while. And he says, kind of whispers it to me because he didn't want to sound crazy in the bagel
coffee
shop. He said, "Do you notice you sleep better?" And I said, "Yes."
Well, I notice it in you more than me because I don't have a problem sleeping. I have a far infrared heating bed that I lay in for an hour first, so then I sleep like a baby. But it's definitely has affected you for sure.
Yeah, because we're not laying there getting our brain scrambled all night long with the scale in the bathroom trying to send the signal to the computer to log in my last weigh-in. So
I have a question for you because I mean it's obviously obviously the mold and all of that is affecting us. The rise with the pet cancers and things like that. I mean that's got to be a contributing factor as well.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about high levels of mold, houses that have been closed up and become airtight and bright. We've got more toxic mold, these molds that produce mycotoxin, because a lot of this manufactured product that we're seeing houses built with, like oriented strand board and engineered flooring, they don't take on water. Wood has the ability to take on a percentage of moisture and release it back into the atmosphere with no effect. But a lot of these manufactured products don't do well under water conditions, and we've built cheaper. Land has become more expensive, so we build more economical. And because we've done that, we've created these nightmares with mold. That's the first thing. The second thing is we've just inundated ourselves with all kinds of chemical compounds, volatile organics, formaldehyde. Formaldehyde is a known carcinogen.
Mm-hmm.
At our company, we test for that. We test for that frequently. Anybody who does a VOC test has to do a formaldehyde test.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because, we're concerned about the level. In the United States, we have way more formaldehyde in our interior structures just because of how we build here. And so that makes it, you're talking about radon now as a cancer-causing agent. Then on top of it, now you've got, formaldehyde. Then you've got mycotoxins being produced by mold. So it's not really surprising that we have cancer and things the way we do.
Do you, where can people order a mold kit? And then do you have people in all states that you can refer somebody to for a mold exam or further
testing?
For testing, anyone can do testing. We do testing in all 50 states.
Okay.
And we do international too. So people call up, they order, they decide, they work with a consultant to decide what kind of testing they want to do, and then they get that particular testing, and they get their home analyzed. And like I said, we do water testing, VOC testing, formaldehyde testing. We do the gamut. But not everybody needs that. Like, that's why you do a consultation with us. We talk about what your issues are. Every home is different. Right? It's like a patient. So everybody's got different issues. Not everybody's going to have the same problems. Some people do and some people don't.
Okay.
So you kind of narrow it down. You do your testing. Go ahead.
So I'm real curious about this and when it's going to catch up in the whole real estate industry. So I typically here we have 10 days to have an inspection done. So for somebody, if somebody wants this mold test and wants to make it part of, subject to, the inspection part, how many days really do I need by the time they get a hold of you, consult, mail it out, do the test, send it back? What's a really good...
If they don't have an inspector, if they don't have an IAQA inspector, and that's indoor air quality IAQA inspector in the area, because, you can Google, there's a website called acac.org, and that will list certified indoor environmentalists who will test for mold. So you can first see if in your local vicinity if you have somebody there. If you don't, then you call us prior. So say, you're going into contract. You order a test kit, you have it there. You go in, it takes 25 minutes to do the test. You mail it out, you'll have the test results in 2 days. So it's either way you can do it. If you have an inspector, you want to have them present at the time of your inspection to do a mold air samples in the home. I usually recommend one sample on each level of the house. So if you have a basement, you take one air sample there, first floor, second floor, and then an outside sample is your baseline that goes off to the lab. If they don't have that, then, like I said, you can't have an inspector. You can do it yourself.
Do the kits have shelf life? I mean, could it be a thing like, we order a dozen kits and just have them here, and then when we go in to do the testing, it just kind of eliminate that first shipping
time frame?
I don't like to do it that way because of the fact that, the answer to your question is yes and no. They run on battery packs, right?
Okay.
So each pump has a battery pack and has to be calibrated. For the most effective results, I like to have it done fresh. That's just me. I've been doing this so long that I like my results to be really accurate. And I work with physicians a lot, and I don't want mistakes.
All right.
So I would prefer people order them closer to the time that they're going to test, just because you want your accuracy ensured. You don't want to get a bad sample.
Okay, so then I test the house. Is there a protocol for how many years? Should you test once a year? Should you test once every 5?
Mm-hmm.
What do you say?
Exactly. Yes, you test every 3 years. And you get it. So once you get your baseline, so if you do your baseline sample, everything's okay. Then next 3 years you test. And the reason you do this is because, bathrooms and kitchens and things like that, I have a timeline, like 20 years and over for a kitchen, it's time for a remodel. Same with the bathroom. These are water sources that we bring inside, and they're going to have mold. I can go through any house and find mold. That's not what necessarily makes it bad. What makes it bad is when you start to have colonization, lots of different colonies forming, molds becoming territorial, throwing mycotoxin, and then molds just, becoming airborne and colonizing to a point that it's unhealthy.
Okay,
so you need to change these things out.
So what was that time frame in redoing the kitchen and the baths?
Watch it. Careful.
20 years.
20 years. We are getting a new bath and a new kitchen next year.
All right. So when you say it's, the molds become territorial, what does that mean?
So if you and I were both molds, for example, and you try to, say we're in a bathroom, and so, like, just for example, we'll talk about bathrooms because we're talking about age of a bathroom. Underneath your tub, every time you take a shower, you condensate. You get a cold tub, you get warm airspace, you'll condensate. Toilets condensate all the time. So after 5 years, you've got some mold growth that just happens because of the conditions we bring in, right? So if there's a lot of different molds, and you and I are a mold, they're territorial. They like to eat their own stuff, and they don't want other molds infringing. They're no different than people. They're just like people. They need air and food and water. And if they get those conditions, they're going to grow. So they try to keep things to themselves. And when they sense another mold species, they start to throw out mycotoxin at it. And what happens is they're doing it to they're smart. And they're colony producers too, which means that you go to clean your bathroom and you don't get the entire colony. What happens is they signal to other molds and say, hey, we're being attacked, send out mycotoxin. So then the other molds start sending out mycotoxin. They're very smart. And they've been around for, eons and eons of years. Mold, is way, way older than us. So they, are smart and territorial, and they protect themselves. So they do it and make you sick, unfortunately, at the same time.
So the friendly mold that created penicillin is not necessarily our friend. Is what I'm hearing.
Well, it kills things for a reason, right? So molds kill things, and so you have to always take that into consideration. And they just, unfortunately, you don't want them in your living spaces. And there were reasons, I think, and when you read old Bible stories and to burn moldy things down, and to people knew that these things had health risks way back before they even understood them.
Carolyn Blazovsky's, ladies and gentlemen, Carolyn Blazovsky, and it's healthyhomeexpert.com. Is that the website you want people to be directed to?
Yeah, that's the best one for people to go to. The name of the company is My Healthy Home, and they can visit us at healthyhomeexpert.com, or if you just Google My Healthy Home on the web, we come up. So.
All right, and this is Our Healthy Homes, ourhealthyhomes.com. We're out to break.
Don't we have one more?
Yep.
We have one more, don't we?
We have one more
Yes, you
segment.
do.
All right.
Who's all on?
You
Hi,
guys
guys.
got to get people testing.
Yes, I know. We really do. That was. We were both on the same page with wanting to have those kits, ahead of time. But
yeah, I wish you could. I mean, if you really want it to be accurate, that's the problem.
Yeah,
I mean,
right, and you do.
You want it, and I'll give you the website too for the kit.
Okay.
And
Ready to come back in?
Yep, we're going to come back in.
All right, last segment. Stand by.
Hey, welcome back to the program. This is the last segment of Our Healthy Homes for this week, ourhealthyhomes.com. And we're back with Carolyn Blazovsky, and we are talking about healthy homes. And when we went out to break, we were talking a little bit about, of course, more about mold, EMFs, and all of that. But I have a question. You do some, we talk about construction techniques, and we mentioned that the way that we build homes now, they're tight, and they have a lot of formaldehyde in them and a lot of chemicals and the preservatives of the wood and plastics and whatnot. When you can, do you consult with builders or families that want to build a house on construction techniques and how they can build, from the ground up a healthy home?
yes. So I recommend a lot of products. I do consultations with people when choosing their products and trying to build, better spaces. A lot of the problem comes into building codes. And as we've increased the building codes, some of these things get a little more challenging to avoid, chemical-based products. And people don't realize that, with a lot of fire retardant and fire issues, they can end up getting wood products that have been treated with these, what we call POPs, or persistent organic pollutants, like flame retardant, which you hear about, people trying to avoid it in bedding, trying to avoid it in couches. Well, people accidentally get it in their homes, and they're worried about their couch, but they don't even realize that the beams in their home have been treated. So, these are all, these POPs that we test for are things that hang around in the environment and sort of linger and can cause a lot of, endocrine disruption and hormone disruption and things like that.
Is that something that dissipates over time, or is it once you're stuck with it, you're stuck with it? Or can you ventilate it out? Or dilution is the cure for pollution, right? I mean, so can you take care of it that way, or is it a long-term problem?
The POPs are much harder to deal with once they've been applied, and they are not. It's not as easy to get rid of as a VOC. VOC, you can do ventilation, you can do a bake out, you can do things to try to reduce it, but a lot of the POPs are much more challenging. Yeah.
And what about so when you sit down with someone, just kind of walk us through what that conversation looks like in terms of you're going to sit down with Sheila and I and say, we want to build a house, we want to build a healthy home. What are the big items that we should try to avoid, and what are some of the things we can substitute?
Well, I think for most cases, whether you're buying a home or you're purchasing a home, depending on if you have someone who's got asthma and allergies, everybody's case by case is very different. But let's just say you're dealing with someone's child who has allergies. You obviously want to do hardwood floors, and you don't want to do carpeting. Even though in some cases I recommend carpeting, people over the age of 65, I will recommend carpeting over hardwood floors or tile because of safety issues. So like I said, every situation is very different. But depending on what your issue is, if you're dealing with a child who has allergies, you want to do a baseboard heating system, you want to do, real plywood, you don't want to do engineered flooring, you want to go with real hardwood or tile. You want to try to go with no OSB products. You want to go with more like CDX plywood. You want to go with breathable materials, stay away from the vinyls and things like that, just to give you an idea.
On insulation, we both live in cold climates, and so insulation is a key part of the component of the house. We're always looking for something that give us that high R-value, and the closed foam spray foam insulation is becoming very, very commonplace and popular. But I'm not really aware of.
Yeah, I'm not an advocate of spray foam.
Okay.
Just because of the chemical exposure. Also, a lot of these insulations, if you spray them in and you do develop a mold problem, I can guarantee one thing. In the lifespan of a house, you're going to have a water issue at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So, as we get these thicker building envelopes and then we use the spray foam, it becomes harder and harder to remediate that if you have mold. So I'm still a very traditional person when it comes to doing a standard batting insulation. I mean, you can go with something like a bonded logic or the jean material. I still go with cases of, formaldehyde insulation, even though, I'll go with a fiberglass just because I'm not a blown in cellulose type of person. I've seen too many health effects because of it. So,
funny you mentioned that, because we were building a house in one of the suburbs here a couple of years ago, and as an upgrade to the property, we spray foamed the entire house. I mean, it would basically just sealed it. And during the construction, of course, they've got the temporary heaters in there, and blowing propane into the house, heat just as a temporary heat source, and it creates a lot of humidity. It just that form of heating. And man, first of all, the heater hardly ever ran. I mean, it was amazing how good the insulation was. But secondly, you go down to the basement and it was humid. I mean, it was just damp down there, and there was no way to get rid of it.
That's right. And what happens is when you tighten these building envelopes, humidity is naturally occurring in the environment, but also as we shower, as we breathe, we produce relative humidity. If that water can't get out through the walls, and people who build a lot with OSB, which is oriented strand board, and that's the patched together wood, people don't know what that is, but it's glued together pieces versus being, instead of being straight plywood. Even though plywood is glued wood, different type of glued wood. OSB doesn't breathe. It doesn't allow vapor to transmit. So that vapor has to try to find its way out somewhere in the house. And that's why you'll see a lot of window rot. You'll see windows, start to delaminate over time. OSB will delaminate over time because of the fact that moisture can't get out. So it's got to be able to either be ventilated through an energy recovery ventilation system, or, vents, hood systems with cooking and all of that, and then bathrooms. But if it can't, then you're going to grow a mold issue.
We found that the only way, you have to have fans running constantly. You have to have
dehumidification in that basement all the time. Commercial dehumidification. Yeah, and through the whole house too. If you're going to go that tight with all the spray foam, you have to be running dehumidification through the ductwork on a separate unit, like not connected to the HVAC, but its own separate system. And it's got to be all the time.
And then it gets back to the different kinds of heating and cooling systems that you put into place too. I mean, years ago, everything was hot water heat, and which it's a dry heat, and now we go back to now it's forced air. It's a little bit more economical, but you are really blowing then warm, moist air throughout the house. And of course, people hang a humidifier on the home, and sometimes
and that's a problem. You never want to. In my book, you never want to put humidifiers on HVAC systems because it's prone to grow mold in your ductwork, and then we've gone to flex duct, which is plastic ducting, which is prone to grow mold. And then we've come away from galvanized metal, and, a lot of the systems that we built. I mean, we could go on forever. There's a lot of building codes that have changed that have created problems.
How many shows do you want to do?
It's lighter, cheaper.
We could do endless shows.
Yeah, lighter, cheaper, and easier to install and last, and forever, but it kills you.
Yeah, you could do multiple shows just on HVAC alone and what's happening. And like I said, on things that we need to be doing for, dehumidification and what people do. But, the biggest, I think if we take a takeaway away from this whole segment, because it's a lot to kind of put into, just one show.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
Monitor relative humidity in your home. This is the cheapest thing you can do. You go out to a hardware store, go to even a convenience store, pick up a little hygrometer, a little measuring device that tells you temperature and relative humidity.
Oh, yeah.
Put it in your house. I have one on each level of my home. Look at it. You want to stay relative humidity between 30 and 50% to have a healthy home. If you do that, you're going to reduce dust mites, mold. You're going to reduce the amount of bugs you have. just simply keeping relative humidity between 30 and 50% helps to keep a healthy home in more ways than you could ever imagine.
Now, if the home
And if you're above that 50%,
that's a problem.
go ahead.
That's a problem then. If you're above 50%,
Yeah,
is
if
a
you're above
problem.
50%, if you're above 50%, then you have to get a dehumidifier. Okay, and if you go below 30%, it's not that it's really going to be bad for you. It's just that it dries out your airways, and then
Right.
when it does that, you're prone to get viruses and colds and things like that because you need moisture to protect you. So, but then you can add a little bit of moisture back in with plants. You can add it back in with a standing humidifier. Just don't put it on your HVAC. You could go with a portable one, but you got to have a UV light on it and you have to keep it clean. So you can add a little bit back in, but more so it's that on the other side, going above the 50%, you need dehumidification in the house. And if you do that, you won't have bugs. You'll keep your mold down, all of it. It's just easier. It's just an easy tip, and you just do it and you'll be a lot healthier.
Well, we build houses, with the hardwood floors. Everyone's concerned that their hardwood floor is going to separate if the house is too dry. So they want to put a April air or a humidifier on the furnace so they can keep that humidity up there. But, a normal winter air probably runs about 15 to 20%, something like that in terms of humidity.
Correct.
So it's a little drier, but normal cooking, taking showers, doing laundry, normal household activities will easily, tip that back up into
Raise
that
it.
30s, low 30s.
Absolutely. Yep.
And
Absolutely.
plants is a good idea unless you're my wife. Then they only
You have
last
a mold allergy.
they only last about a week.
You can go with you can go with plants like spider plants, philodendrons. They're great at removing chemicals. They remove formaldehyde. There's a system now that we work with. They're actually plant-based purifiers, which is amazing. It was designed by Mark Prescott, a company that I work with, and we actually sell them, and you can put them on. You could never kill this thing. Like you could water it once every 2 months, and it'll just thrive. It's great, and it's all to remove chemicals, and it's all natural, and there's no mold and byproduct, and they're plant-based systems. They were sort of funneled off of the living wall systems that they use a lot in the cities, but they're great.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. You're very gracious to be on the show for this week. We'll be back next week. This is Our Healthy Homes, and we're out for this week. Carolyn, thank you.
Thanks, guys. There's so much to talk about, so I apologize. It's just hard to, it's such a big topic.
It is a big
Can we
topic.
have you on again?
Absolutely, anytime.
Okay.
I mean, I'd like to help you guys start doing mold testing up there because it's got to be done. I mean, that's,
right.
I can't even tell all of your, you deal with real estate, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So that's
our
baby.
main business. Yep.
So tell your customers. So start pushing it and just say, look, don't buy a house without a mold test and a water test. End of story. And I'm sure we can hook you up with some. I'm sure up there that there's IAQA professionals. I mean, they're all over the place.
Yep, I'm going to look for it.
And do a mold. Yeah, but definitely. I mean, every client should be doing it, and you'll be surprised if we walk away from so many houses. And obviously, if you have any questions or if people want to do it, they can contact us and do it.
Perfect.
Fine. Okay. Well, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Good luck, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.